Czechia sits at the heart of Europe, more so than people realize. It is the place where two of Europe's major rivers, the Oder and the Elbe, come together. But just 200 kilometers to the south is the Danube, Europe's second longest navigable river. Lawmakers in Prague look to dig a new canal to connect these three arteries into a unifying network. If successful, it will interlink the major rivers of Central Europe and provide seamless navigation between three peripheral seas: the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, and the North Sea. European commerce and trade would flow uninterrupted from one end to the other. The scale of the project is remarkable, but it's more than just a convergence of water bodies. It's also a convergence of geoeconomics and geopolitics. It brings forth a plethora of opportunities, linking diverse landscapes, vibrant cultures, and rich histories, all while aiming to create a sustainable future. Some call the proposed canal a stroke of brilliance, a game-changer comparable to the Suez Canal. Others, however, say it's an exorbitant project of monumental folly that hurts the Czech economy and endangers the environments nearby. Opinions differ strongly, and while the youth know the rules, the old know the exceptions. Making original content is not easy. It takes you about 15 minutes to watch this video, but it takes me dozens of hours to research and produce the best possible content. To work smarter, not just harder, I use Opera, which happens to be today's sponsor. Opera is a browser packed with useful features. It has a built-in AI called Aria. You just click a button and it opens a tab where you can ask Aria anything. It will immediately search the internet to bring you a quick answer. For this video, let me just quickly search for the dimensions of the Elbe River. How long is it? Okay, and now, how deep is it? Boom, there it is. It's like having a personal assistant to look up basic information while keeping my tabs and workflow in place. Speaking of tabs, Opera also allows you to organize your tabs in the groups neatly. When needed, all it takes is one click to either collapse or expand them. I usually have a few dozen tabs open at the same time, so this feature is a lifesaver for me. There are tons of other efficient, time-saving features built into Opera. You can integrate social media, manage subscriptions, there's even a built-in ad blocker. All these features and more are just one click away. So save yourself time, work smarter, and declutter your online experience. Download Opera using the link in the description. It's completely free, and honestly, I can't recommend it enough. Unifying the rivers of Central Europe is hardly a new idea. In the 14th century, Emperor Charles IV of the Holy Roman Empire had built Prague into one of Europe's finest cities. But years before, Charles had laid out a vision to build a waterway that would take ships from the Oder to the Danube. It was a proposition of immense potential, especially in terms of trade, security, and power projection. Charles left the project unfinished, though. It was unfeasible at the time due to restrictions in technology, human resources, and funding. In the centuries following, countless other monarchs revived the idea, all hoping to prove their worth by stepping into the shoes of Charles. None succeeded, though. The idea of unifying Central Europe's rivers remained just that, an idea. The technology wasn't ready, and it wouldn't be ready for centuries. In the early 19th century, however, things started to change dramatically. Europe was in the midst of industrialization. The global power distribution was undergoing a transformation. Empires of old were crumbling. Asia couldn't keep up, Africa was colonized, and Europe emerged at the top of the food chain. Roughly at the same time, France had completed the Suez Canal in Egypt, which connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. It was a marvel feat of engineering that allowed ships to bypass the lengthy trip around the southern tip of Africa. The success of the Suez Canal inspired similar projects far and wide, including the first attempt to build the Panama Canal. Meanwhile, in Europe, the hype surrounding canal and civil engineering revived the idea of unifying Central Europe's rivers. But then again, the 19th century was also a period of unforeseen political changes and dramatic technological advances. So, the idea for a canal underwent transformation after transformation, each time adjusting to the new geopolitical landscape and the technological shifts of the era. Various proposals were laid on the table, each with its unique approach to connecting the rivers. At the heart of each iteration was Czechia. With its central position in Europe, Czechia naturally emerged as a pivotal player in the canal's narrative. The megaproject strategically placed Czechia at the nexus of the major waterways. Detailed plans were drafted, but none were deemed economically and politically viable. The project remained largely on paper, with political upheavals, conflicts, and economic instability overshadowing the developmental aspirations. It wasn't until the 21st century that renewed interest emerged in the canal project. The collapse of the Iron Curtain and the Soviet Union brought about the long peace in Europe. All sorts of economic, environmental, and political concepts were up for reconsideration. In 1993, however, Czechoslovakia had disintegrated peacefully into two separate nations, Czechia and Slovakia. At the same time, the Maastricht Treaty established the European Union as a political and economic union. Prague joined that union in 2004, but something was off. Czechia became the only country in the European Union that was not directly connected to the open oceans or to navigable waterways. For added context, Czechia does have navigable rivers, but the extent of navigability and the size of vessels that can use these rivers is inadequate. Unlike the flat geography in Germany and Poland, the terrain in Czechia is characterized by rolling hills, plateaus, and mountain ranges. As such, when the Elbe and Oder rivers reach Czech soil, water depth, infrastructure, and seasonal variations in water levels restrict commercial cargo. Essentially, Czechia got the short end of the stick, and the results speak for themselves. For Prague, transportation costs account for the bulk of its imported goods. Roughly 40 to 60% of the price of imported goods is made up of transportation costs. No other member state of the European Union had such a disadvantage. Not surprisingly, in 2016, Czech President Miloš Zeman emerged as the most vocal proponent of the canal project. However, Zeman's proposal was even more ambitious than past blueprints. He sought not only to link the Danube with the Oder, but also with the Elbe. To accomplish this, not one but two canals were needed, going in a U-shape across Czechia. After years of political negotiating, the Czech government gave the green light on the first phase of the mega project. Costing a staggering 24.4 billion euros, the contemporary version of the project looks to geoengineer canals to the Danube, Oder, and Elbe rivers. Each of these rivers flows into different seas. The Danube is Europe's second longest river. It originates in Germany's Black Forest region and flows southeast through Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine before emptying into the Black Sea. The Danube serves as a vital waterway for international trade and transport. Meanwhile, the Oder originates in the Czech Republic. It flows through Poland and, along its course, it serves as part of the Polish-German border before reaching the Baltic Sea. The Oder enables regional trade, but also provides essential water resources to the nearby nations. Finally, the Elbe River. It has its source in the Czech Republic and crosses Germany to eventually merge with the North Sea. The Elbe is a major navigation route and plays a significant role in the economic activities of the regions it flows through. All three rivers traverse different terrains, intersecting with diverse ecosystems, bustling cities, and industrial areas. These rivers are the lifelines for the places they go through. They facilitate trade, transport, agriculture, and serve as sources of water. Joining these rivers together is therefore not just a matter of physical merging, but it means joining the histories, aspirations, and futures that define Central Europe. It means bringing all of Central Europe's heavy industries together and connecting them with global markets. Czechia, being landlocked, has incredible interest vested in the Danube-Oder-Elbe canal. If successful, the canals would directly connect the Czech Republic with three major European ports: Germany's port city of Hamburg on the Elbe, Poland's port of Szczecin on the Oder, and Romania's port city of Brăila on the Danube. Czechia has a lot riding on this mega project. Proponents say if constructed, the canals would allow Prague to bypass its immense transportation costs, or at least mitigate them substantially. It would also boost Prague's role in regional and international logistics, not to mention add a few digits to the national GDP growth. The Danube-Oder-Elbe canal would be a game changer in the economic landscape of Central Europe. For Czechia, the ripple effects of the project would be manifold, starting with enhanced trade and commerce. It would streamline the movement of goods and services, reducing transit times and costs for all the adjacent states. The canal could even act as a catalyst for economic diversification, spurring growth in sectors like tourism, logistics, and manufacturing. Moreover, according to its proponents, a project this strategic could generate employment and stimulate local economies along its route, contributing to the socio-economic development of the regions it traverses. Value chains are what the experts call such corridors. Meanwhile, Czechia would turn into a gateway for goods and commodities between Northern, Western, and Southern Europe. Not a bad deal for a small country. But a geoengineering project of this scale, a project that spans so many countries, cannot possibly be an exclusive Czech enterprise. Due to the inherent international nature of water bodies, lawmakers in Prague have had to negotiate in the larger European platform and gather consensus within the European Union. Arguably, this has proven to be more difficult than the civil engineering required to complete building the canals. That said, soon after announcing the mega project, Poland and Slovakia joined with Czechia. Lawmakers in all three countries agreed to start on the first stage, which is creating a navigable waterway from the Danube to the Czech city of Ostrava near the Polish border. Doing so would link the Danube River to the Baltic Sea. The design would see a 40-meter wide canal that could serve vessels with up to a 5-meter draft. At the same time, the canal would see the construction of 8 bridges in both Czechia and Slovakia. It would also see the construction of 2 lock chambers for ships moving upstream or downstream through a section with a different water level. Still more, a new port in the Czech city of Svinov would be constructed to oversee operations. In all, Czechia earmarked 500 million euros to kickstart the first stage, while Poland set aside 1 billion euros. Slovakia's share, meanwhile, was still under negotiation. The allocated funding was not nearly enough to complete the first stage, but the vendors figured it would be easier to lobby for additional funding once construction had commenced. Either way, upon completion, Czechia, Poland, and Slovakia would then look to build a similar canal linking the Danube-Oder waterway to the Elbe River. If that second stage was successful, Czechia could then consider a third stage and expand its waterways by connecting the Oder and Vistula rivers at the Czech-Polish border. At this third stage of the project, Czechia would be connected to the strategic port of Gdansk in Poland. In any case, digging was set to commence in the first stage. Then, suddenly and abruptly, COVID happened. Like so many things worldwide, the pandemic and the rampant inflation that followed created all sorts of new, unforeseen complications. Border checkpoints, delayed imports and exports, global trade slowed down, and raw materials became more difficult to come by. Even within the Schengen area, of which Czechia is part of, all kinds of logistical bottlenecks emerged. Meanwhile, the initial estimate of 24 billion euros was calculated before the pandemic. No new studies have been conducted since, but the new price for the mega project would likely be much higher. Prague hadn't committed to the total 24 billion euros. It had instead hoped to gather the mega project through a blend of public and private investments, international grants, and possibly European Union funding. Now, those ambitions may as well be pipe dreams. At a time of scrutinized spending, massive investment megaprojects like the Danube-Oder-Elbe Canal tend to spark heated public debates. Critics say the canals make no sense and point to Germany as the root of the issue. When Germany completed its own geo-engineered canal in the 1980s and linked the Rhine and Main rivers to the Danube, the project was initially a success. But as the Soviet Union collapsed, the German economy changed. Industrial activity in Germany's Bavaria region shifted eastward, and Germany started specializing in services and higher added value manufacturing. As a result, traffic along the Rhine-Main-Danube Canal dropped from 18 million tons to just 2 tons each year. Czechia and Poland were among the nations that took up those basic industrial activities, and they still do. However, this economic model is running out of steam. Czechs don't just want employment, they want better salaries and living standards on par with Western Europe. At the same time as the Czech GDP per capita has increased, the country has faced increasing competition from still cheaper labor pools further east. Essentially, Czechia is in the midst of an economic transition, the same transition Germany went through in the 1990s as it outsourced basic industrial activities to the east. In the coming decade, Czechia is likely to do the same. But copying the German way of economic and industrial modernization requires anything but an artificial canal. Just as traffic along the German artificial canal dropped since the 1990s, it is unlikely that there would be a major shift from trucks to ships. In fact, a canal megaproject designed to carry bulk cargo is somewhat counterintuitive to the Czech public need for economic development. Critics say if Czechia is to modernize its economy, it needs to look to Estonia, which presses for smart connectivity and innovation, and not so much on water transportation. The €24 billion price tag that comes with the canal megaproject is money that could be otherwise spent on education reform and digital infrastructure. Prague has for a while struggled to encourage innovation. Boosting the annual public funding for research and development would certainly turn things around. It would be a safer bet than an artificial canal, no matter how well interconnected. But high costs aren't the only hurdles to Czechia's waterway ambitions. Environmental concerns are just as important and just as profound. The ecological impact of a geoengineering project of this scale would undoubtedly affect local wildlife, plant life, and natural habitats. Environmentalists and local communities have since raised their voices, emphasizing the potential threats to biodiversity and the broader ecological balance. Greenpeace says that the project threatens irreversible damage to the environment, arguing that by building a concrete canal, annual droughts would become more frequent and more severe. Plus, the lock chambers could accelerate flood waves, which would then canalize and deepen nearby riverbeds. In times of increased precipitation, this geological change could increase the risk of flooding. Still more, if the canals were to damage the regional ecosystems, it would fundamentally violate EU environmental and nature conservation directives. The involved state would then face fines by EU legislation. The risks to the environment are high, so much so that German authorities have gone on record saying that they will not approve construction to make the stretch between the Czech and German border navigable for freight transport. All these considerations, the economic tangibility and environmental risks, show that the devil is in the details. While a canal unifying Europe's navigable rivers sounds inspiring, reality has a way of humbling even the grandest designs. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report, so if you haven't yet subscribed, now is a good time to do so. Just remember to click the bell icon, otherwise you'll still be missing out on our latest content. Thank you for watching, and Sağ ol.